All right, welcome back, everybody, to DoSpace's 2024 Sustainability Summit. I am Michael Sowers, your host, technology manager for DoSpace, and we are at our final presentation for the day. Special shout out to everybody who's made it all day with me. And I got to say, I saved the best for last, and I'm calling it that only because I am involved in this project. With us is Tim Williams, design principal at HDR. Tim is an architect from Omaha with a global portfolio of work. He focuses on creating high-performance buildings that balance aesthetics, sustainability, and functionality. Is one of the lead designers of the new Omaha Central Library, the future home of DoSpace. Tim strives to reflect his commitment to both the environment and the communities he serves. I have been involved in this project for a couple of years now. I have learned so much about building a building, and I barely probably scratched the surface. And I know there's lots of little details I don't even know about. So that's why I've been waiting for this presentation myself. Tim, welcome. Thanks for doing this for us. And what do you have for us?
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, that's great. I think the project probably wouldn't be anything without you. I think
Thank
you're,
you.
you're yeah, you're the only one. You
All right,
got it.
no, I'm not the only one.
No, it's been great. It's working with you and the entire Do Space staff has been a really cool process. Getting into what you guys do, it's an incredible, thing that you guys offer to the city and the people of Omaha. So we're grateful
Thank
to be able to be involved in this and help you guys out for a second time, really, right? I mean,
you.
HDR, we did the original Do Space building when we renovated that Borders several years ago. So
Great.
yeah. So
Fair enough.
yeah, as Michael was saying, I'm design principal with HDR out of the Omaha office. I'm from Omaha, and I'm an architect, and I've really grew up here and then left for about 15 years. Came back, moved back to Omaha about 5 years ago. I was working on my resume, trying to figure out where I should work on my resume, and I decided to go to a public venue where I could, focus on my work. And I went to DoSpace. I wrote my resume and I sent it off to HDR after that, and I ended up getting my job here. So in many ways, it's kind of some kind of full circle process how I've kind of come to be involved with DoSpace again. Um, the things that I'm going to talk about today is kind of coming from the architecture and kind of building sectors is thinking about what sustainability means in architecture. So I'm going to lay out some of the challenges that we currently face in the world, really. And then I'll get down to some of the solutions that at least we're beginning to address it in architecture and the environment. And then I'm going to talk about what we're doing on the new central library to kind of address that. So the first part is kind of the doom and gloom, kind of what many of us are familiar with, but all the challenges that are come about with all of the climate issues that are taking place, and especially in the architecture, building, and construction industries. Buildings and their operations and the materials that go in them account for about 40% of all global CO2 emissions. So it's a huge impact on what we choose to put in our buildings and how we operate our buildings. So there's so much that can be done by further addressing this. Buildings even continue to consume and emit carbon throughout their lifespan. They will be renovated, there'll be new materials brought in. Can have a huge impact throughout the life of the process. Concrete itself is one of these, inherent materials that's a major player in just about every building, and it's one of the largest producers of greenhouse gases. It's 8%, just concrete of all global greenhouse gas emissions. Second to that in our industry is steel as well. It has a big impact. Although steel is kind of getting to a place where they now have some much more efficient furnaces that allow to cut down on some of that CO2. So I mean, and I'm not really just talking about just the material itself. It's about the CO2 emitted when they mine the raw material, when they're manufacturing it, when they're transiting it, when they're at the end of its life as well. So it's thinking about the entire life cycle of a material product. And so just kind of very high level, like how we're beginning to, as an industry, address and begin to look at some of the solutions that are out there, or ways or pathways for us to begin to correct some of these issues. I'm going to talk about three of these. There's a lot of different standards and systems that are out there that speak to wellness and health of buildings and the sustainability of them. But I'm kind of going to focus in on these three, which are first off, the AIA framework. So the American Institute of Architects is kind of like the big licensing, one of the licensing bodies within the industry. And as a HDR is a member of this firm, and we're committed is a member to the AIA. We're a member firm, and we're really committed to the code of ethics that they kind of bind us by. In the same way, a doctor has an oath to not do harm. In some ways, we've also kind of signed on to the responsibilities of these ambitious climate goals, as well as optimizing water consumption, incorporating healthy materials, minimizing unhealthy ones. How can we restore ecologies and habitats? Can we incorporate resilience strategies while minimizing environmental, social, and economic impacts? The framework is really also meant as a celebration of them as well. They hold awards at the end of every year where where designs and projects are awarded based on their performance in each of these categories. The next one that kind of high level is something called net zero. This sometimes is called net zero carbon, sometimes net zero energy. And this is about what if we could totally eliminate the carbon impact that buildings have on the built environment. And a key part of that is this net zero part. It's not about eliminating carbon from the entire project, but it's about offsetting it or having ways to generate additional energy on site to begin to pay back in a way the carbon that may be required to create a project. And so there's also this idea about how can we also use materials in a project that begin to use some of this carbon, and not in a manufactured way that releases it into the air, but materials that actually are made of carbon and soak it up, and we can use them in the buildings themselves. So they actually end up as a negative versus a positive release of carbon dioxide. And one of the best ways to do that is trees, right? Trees bring in oxygen, output carbon dioxide. Wait, opposite. Breathe in carbon dioxide, output oxygen. That's how trees work. And as part of that process, they themselves are heavily made of carbon, and we can use them for the building industry to create a building that is actually has a negative carbon impact. The whole industry of trees and forestry is a well-known thing, and there are sustainable ways to harvest trees. So I'm not saying let's go to the rainforest and chop down all the trees there, but I'm more talking about some of the Forest Stewardship Council provisions that are looking at keeping forests, planting them and using them in a sustainable way that you can continue to replenish forests while you are able to harvest from them. And wood also is this really interesting way of even after its life cycle to go back and be reused in other ways. many times you can just reuse a piece of wood, or you can grind it up for industrial processes and reuse it within different manufacturing, like is it OSB or these other kind of particle board or paper. There's other ways to reuse industrial timber, or even going back into some power plants that are able to accommodate this kind of fuel source. And so the idea that there's even a step further beyond net zeros, where you're not just balancing out, but you're actually improving the built condition, is this idea of a regenerative future where you can actually have a positive impact by building a building on the site. So, many of you are like, hey, I've already, my house is made of wood. Am I carbon negative? So it's kind of a very different material in many ways. The light wood frame that your house is made of is likely not the same as what we're talking about with this, what's called mass timber, which is really basically gluing together a bunch of 2x4s to make much larger members. And they do that to allow for the similar column-free environments that you come to expect from steel buildings or concrete buildings to improve their structural performance. But it does also help with its fire resistance. Fire would obviously be one of those first things, like, hey, wood burns. That's not good, right? But the interesting thing is when you do get thicker with the wood and you allow the wood, when it burns, it actually only burns that first several inches. And then what's left on the inside can remain as a structural element. So when engineers go to actually figure out how big a beam needs to be, they take into account this couple extra inches that are essentially just used as allowed to burn away in the event of fire. So in many ways, wood can actually obtain equivalent ratings to what you can with steel or concrete buildings. And for the flat portions of the building, like the floor and the roof, you can make it out of something called a CLT or GLT or NLT. These are all just essentially giant plywood. So they're huge layers of thick lumber instead of thin veneer layers that you see in plywood. But they're all just more ways to, again, take some of that carbon that would normally be released into the atmosphere, and you're actually embodying it within the building, creating this negative carbon environment. And this has a benefit, in many ways, we still need to use concrete and steel in projects. You're not really going to bury wood as a foundation element, but we'll still rely on concrete. But at least timber is also quite a bit lighter when you build out the full structure than steel, which allows for lighter foundations. So that means less concrete for the foundations of a building, which equals, again, less carbon. So this is a kind of a cool study that we did for a project. And they wanted to evaluate the idea of what if we switch to a mass timber project? How do we end up? What impact does that have from a carbon standpoint? So we did kind of a base project that was just all steel. And then we looked at the carbon impact of each of those. So we have carbon embedded within the concrete, we have carbon within the steel, and those each have a certain amount of kilograms of CO2 that are added up to create this number. It's just kind of for reference, 267. And then when we went to evaluate what if we switched to this mass timber scheme, where we use a majority mass timber, but still using steel elements where it's required. So this project was in California, and they have earthquake provisions there that in Nebraska and Midwest, we mostly don't have to deal with. So that's why there's these steel members, which could not be done out of mass timber at the time. When we began to really look at this project with mass timber, we still had a little bit of concrete. Mass timber usually has about 2 or 3 inches of concrete on the roof, on the top of the floor, and on the foundations, as I said. There's also some steel still left over within various miscellaneous areas. But then there's all of this carbon that's captured by the wood itself. And when you really end up doing the math, the project actually ended up netting out to this negative carbon impact. So by building the project was actually resulting in absorbing more carbon into the built environment rather than release it into the air. And we're fortunate in Omaha to really benefit from some of our colleagues up in Canada and the Pacific Northwest, where mass timber is a very common way to build and incredibly cost effective. They've done over 70 projects, and we've been fortunate to really tap into these industry experts and utilize them on some other projects. So recently, we were given the opportunity to do an addition to the College of Architecture at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. And as stewards and educators ourselves at the college, teaching this future generation this kind of, I'll say new style of building, but really it's a very traditional way of building. Mass timber was a perfect example for that. So I just want to share some of these projects that was recently completed. I'm sure many of you have walked by it on the way to the football games, but it's a small addition, but very impactful and has a huge presence on the site. One of the benefits of mass timber as well is it has a faster erection cycle. So you can essentially build a mass timber building faster than you can a steel or concrete building. So that was a huge bonus for the university because they need to, they have deadlines. They have students coming in, at a specific day in the fall, and you need to have the project complete by then. So having a fast construction schedule really helps with that. And I think one of I've just been talking about the carbon impact of mass timber, but it's also a really beautiful material inside of a space. We often just can leave it exposed. You're not going back and painting it and putting drywall on like you do with usually often steel and concrete or other structural materials. And we completed one in downtown Omaha just recently at 1501 Mike Fahey. And this one is a commercial office building. So it's not an experimental architecture building. This is a real world project that really saw the benefit of investing in creating a mass timber portions of the building. So the lobby and some of the ground floor spaces and the perimeter columns are all mass timber. Just it's an incredible environment. So the last of the systems that I'm going to talk about is called LEED, Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. It's a system set up by the USGBC, which is a private organization that has kind of advocated for sustainability and certification of individuals and projects to promote sustainable buildings. And it does say USGBC, but it is actually really a worldwide organization. They certify projects all around the world, and they really are the leader at the moment in terms of the standard for creating sustainable buildings. And so it continues to reinvent itself. They're on version 4 now, so they continue to evolve as codes evolve, as the law evolves, as the entire practice of architecture evolves in building and maintenance. And they break it out into these 5 different rating criteria. So there's BD&C, which is building design and construction, interior design and construction, operation and maintenance, neighborhood development, and homes. And so if a project is pursuing it, they're going after usually just one of these these rating systems. And within each rating system, then there's a range of categories that you can earn credits within each of them. And by earning credits, more credits equals more sustainable in a high level sense. So they call this a scorecard, and it's essentially a yes, we're achieving this credit, no, we're not. And you add up the points in the end to begin to see kind of where you're falling on this. So, for example, our headquarters building that I'm in right now in Exarban in Omaha is a LEED Gold project. So that means let's go to this slide. It's a rating system of four different levels, with certified being the lowest number of points you've achieved. Silver, gold, and then platinum are the kind of exceptional projects. There's very few platinum projects in the state of Nebraska. But I did see that there's about 90 projects in Nebraska that have achieved certified or above, which is pretty good. And so our headquarters, as I was saying, is achieve LEED Gold through this same kind of process. And you can go up online and just on the USGBC website, and you can search for other projects nearby. You can pull up their scorecard and see where they've achieved the different how they achieve their rating. And kind of at the end, when you get it, maybe you've seen these in some buildings, that you get this kind of little plaque that's often hanging in the lobby where everyone can see it. And so that kind of brings us to where we are, the new Omaha Central Library. We've learned about kind of rating systems, in general, strategies for building more sustainable projects, and LEED, learned about LEED, and that became the primary system that we decided to strive for on the Central Library. So the Central Library is, just as a high level understanding, is a project to relocate what was the Central Library in downtown Omaha and bring it to essentially the center of the city at 72nd and Dodge. And to really use the site that was previously occupied by DoSpace and Borders before that. So it's bringing this kind of DoSpace, which was essentially almost a Omaha Public Library branch, though not formally, bring that as part of this project as well. So moving the administrative portion, creating this new central administrative branch, and wrapping in DoSpace within that as well. And it's a project to also kind of redefine what a library is. Libraries have changed a lot since probably our last library in Omaha was built. They've changed, and they're not really about the kind of spaces where you're just saying hushing people and saying be quiet and going off and quietly reading. That's not the only thing you're doing, but there really is a huge range of diverse media that people are consuming and sharing now there. They've become the community spaces, really, that people can come and share, and really we can only come together socially in a public forum. And it's really kind of the living room for the city. It's where there's literal couches where you can come and sit down and have a coffee. 72nd and Dodge has also got an interesting past as well that kind of sets up for an interesting future. So by placing the building here, it really set out from what was taking place, what the library was looking to move their administrative offices to somewhere around this area. This is a really interesting site that allows for more public engagement, especially putting it on such a prominent corner where there's a lot of activity. I know the DoSpace folks, you all know it really well. Um, we we really have been looking at creating a building then that not only sets out to have a totally new interior and kind of programming to it, and but also the outside kind of reflects this kind of totally different take on what a library could be, to kind of reinvigorate and add this kind of spark to what's possible inside, and kind of redo your preconceptions you may have. So, and of course, a huge part of libraries is also making sure everyone is welcome. It's truly a place where everyone can come in and find something that they're interested in within it. Um, there's so many different types of spaces within here that I think there's something that will make everyone find their own spot. And there's spaces that are outside too. Not all of it's inside the building. There's a courtyard on the south side of the building that will allow for this kind of more of a little bit more of a plaza experience, as well as some outdoor children's playscape there, and even kind of a grassy terrace for people to have outdoor reading events or just meet some friends. There's this really interesting aspect that it also is kind of a first. Um, the library has also taken this idea about utilizing some new technology about how we could use something called a automatic storage and retrieval system, which is essentially, we call it often the book bot, and it's a giant robot that, it's actually two robots that store books on shelves within the heart of the building. And this is really a place for them to store books that are more of a not frequently visited books, not frequently checked out books, but it is also allows for a rapid retrieval of books if they are called up. So within several minutes, you can call up a book on one of the devices and have it available at a counter for you to reach. So this is one of the systems in place at the Hunt Library in Raleigh, where they were using a series of these book bots to store their books and other media. The Omaha Central Library is going to be the first public library to have a system like this, although it is widely used in university libraries across the country. And very popular in many other kind of shipping and storage warehouses as well. But what it also does is it allows us to build less of a building. If anything you've learned so far, it's that building anything, any square footage, usually results in a less of a positive impact on the environment. So by condensing all of this to a smaller footprint, it's also allowed the building to be smaller, because we don't have rows and rows of archival shelves that are not accessible to the public, but instead it's something in the heart of the building that people can get to. And it also has the added benefit of now the other branches are able to store some of their stuff in the central library as well, which frees up space in each of those branches, allowing them to create some of these more dynamic programming things that we were learning about that are in demand. It creates really, when you bring it all together, just a really interesting, allows all this free space to be available for these kind of different events that can take place at the library. So the ground floor, the first floor, still has books, still has plenty of books out to see, but it also has a lot of open space. So speaking about the living room of the city, it allows the first floor to be like that. And so when we think about LEED and how LEED applies to the project, We are going down the building design and construction, so that's essentially new buildings. And I'm going to talk through just some of the different categories that we're targeting to get credits from. Location and transportation is one of the categories, and we're benefiting from the access to public transit. Omaha does not have a lot of public transit, so when we do get to build a project adjacent to some of these stops, it does really help us, especially for lead credits. So with the Orbit bus stop just on Dodge Street, the two Orbit bus stops, that really helps us tie into the more sustainable ways of accessing the building itself. Additionally, there's also plenty of bicycle facilities that are available for people to come via their bike. And then there's also EV charging will be available to people when they're there. We have a reduced parking footprint, so there's a small parking garage that has kind of a reduced footprint than what is often seen. And we do benefit from the diversity and density of the area around there. So one of the positive things is there's just so much happening in this area. You can, walk across the street. You have Chipotle, Starbucks, all that. You've got a Target across the street. You've got businesses nearby. So just within a close area, we're able to obtain some lead points by having a project like this. So though a lot of these things are not really our decision as architects, but they do benefit the project by choosing sites such as this. Energy and atmosphere. So this is the most, this category brings the most points to our total score. It has 33 possible points that you can achieve. And a big part of that is the energy efficiency of the building. So right now our project is achieving 16% lower than the Omaha code. So we've reduced the energy usage of the building required through a variety of strategies I'll talk about. We've reduced the natural gas consumption by about half. And then we're even beating the LEED baseline building by about 30%. So we've spent a lot of effort to really improve the energy efficiency of the building through a variety of ways. We also have commissioning, which is where we have some experts essentially come out and ensure systems are set up correctly. So is your mechanical system actually functioning the way it's supposed to? Is the exterior of the building leaking air, or is it actually performing the way it was designed to? These can help get the building set up. And we also have some, we're targeting the enhanced refrigerant management points as well, which is about more efficient uses of refrigerants. And kind of the challenge there is refrigerants often are very harmful to the environment when released. So that's why keeping them reduced is essential. Big part of that, and a really unique thing on the project, is this underfloor air distribution system. So we have a lot of very big volumes within the building, part of creating that kind of public space feel. And a high ceiling is very difficult to deliver air, like cooled and heated air down to someone on the ground. But a very efficient way, and the way we're doing is by actually feeding it from the floor itself. So the photo on the left is from Calgary Central Library, where we visited there, and they use this system where the air is actually distributed through the floor. So there's kind of a false floor is built up, as you see on the right. This is a different project, neither the library nor Calgary. And it allows for air to be distributed beneath the floor instead of through the ceiling like you often see. That allows for these little adjustable grills on the ground that can be tweaked or changed to allow for people to change the if they're not feeling comfortable with the air distributed to them, they can change it and it will, just like in your car, right? You can turn off the little fan if it's giving you too much or too little air. It's the same thought, but it also has a huge benefit to the library and the way that they want to operate and run the space. It allows for more flexibility. You're able to move an electrical box from one spot to another. You can move these diffusers around. So in the next 10, 20, 50 years, as the library continues to evolve, this floor system will also allow them to evolve too. I also thought it would be really, originally would think it would be not very strong to, is it going to collapse or anything? But actually these are incredibly sturdy and, designed to hold these, shelves and shelves of books. So it's a very sturdy system, which is something that one may not intuitively think. Another huge benefit to the energy performance is what happens on the exterior of the building. So for all the vision glass on the building, all the windows, we're using triple glazed glass. So that means that there's 3 layers of glass with these cavities of air between them. And that allows for much more efficient energy performance of the building. You're not losing heat through it in the winter. You're not losing your cooled air in the summer. It's really keeping the outside where it wants to be. And it also has a really deep, thick facade that allows for additional insulation and also provides some shading on itself. So it's kind of shading even before the light gets within the building. It's an incredibly unique facade design that really is, I think maybe many of you, if you've driven by the site, are beginning to see, but it's really a collection of these small windows that are combined with a kind of another layer of glass on the outside to give the effect of this kind of morphing glass building, which is also really important in how we provide natural light inside. Providing natural lighting is also some more credits that you can achieve if you obtain a certain score. Reducing the glare inside there. We've designed some sunshades that go on some of the big open glass areas that face the south to have these sunshades that will cut down on any glare coming inside. And then also the quality views is another, we're targeting some lead points from that as well. So we want people to look outside at good things. So each of these things are not really just like, yeah, that looks good. I think we're there. We'll check that box. But they are actually like really rigorously studied, and we have brilliant engineers working on things like this to look at and evaluate different design options and how the building is performing from all of these different metrics. So how much can the building stand without any, does the building need any artificial light within it? Or is it obtaining plenty of light from just the outside? Or is it getting too much light from the outside and we need to cut down on some of it? These are all really key metrics that we track throughout the project. Evaluate different design decisions, such as the sunshades I was talking about. We looked at first not having them, as you can see on the left, but it made these areas that were basically going to be cooked if you were sitting there for a long enough period of time. In the summer, it might feel really warm, but by adding just these small sunshades on the outside, it's really cutting down on the glare that comes within the building. Evaluating it in a lot of different software. I think this is just kind of, this was very early in the project, but we continue to use it throughout. It's also important to provide the ability for people to move throughout the building and live an active lifestyle. So it's by having even publicly visible stairs within the project, you can obtain lead points for that. So that promotes people it promotes their own health as part of it for those that are able to use the stairs. But it also cuts down on, elevator electrical requirements. So you're having less of an impact there, but having more activity here. And it's not just about having, many of us have been through the egress stairs, the escape stairs, those fire ones that are surrounded by concrete block. But it's about putting stairs in big visible public spaces. So you can walk around and see other people walking around. It's creating this kind of visual connection you can have and this ease of transiting throughout the space. So even taking the stair and some of the materials we've been looking at are also this kind of more tactile materials such as wood to, promote and really try to encourage people to use the stairs for those that are able. And from a water perspective, I don't want to show any photos of toilets, but I do think it's a key aspect of actually achieving water reduction is by having some really efficient fixtures throughout the project. So efficient toilets, efficient faucets, all of these help to contribute to a reduction of 36%, which is where we're at right now. And then on the outside of the building, we have drought-resistant plants. So that really cuts down on any irrigation that is going to be required throughout the project. And you also get credits for metering your project. Here's this kind of outdoor green space I was talking about earlier. A lot of native plants throughout the garden really means that they don't have to get out there and water it as much, a lot less maintenance, but also can be really beautiful. And then back to the inside, some of the key impacts and points that we can obtain is by choosing low emitting materials. So what that is there's VOCs, or volatile organic compounds. I think that's right. And that is they're essentially slightly toxic fumes that are emitted. I think we all know the feeling if you've unrolled a new carpet or something like that, these smells that can also often have very negative impact on our health. So we've specifically chosen, the design team, materials that have a low VOC content, and that's a big part in how you create environments that are actually healthier for people when they're within. And EPDs, or environmental product declarations. Those are essentially forms that material product manufacturers, they all create these forms, and you can actually go search for them. You can search for some carpet supplier EPD and their global warming potential, and you can find the kilograms of CO2 that each product is releasing into the environment. So all this data is actually out there, and you can find out these things. And so by actually using these EPDs and having everyone have to submit these for almost every element on the project, allows us to better track and understand the implications of choosing different materials. So that's kind of throughout the interior. There's a lot of wood, that also to the earlier points about carbon sequestration and reducing environmental impact, that plays a big part in it. So we are targeting LEED Gold. And so I say targeting because it's never really done until the project is totally complete and they've come to review the project itself. So we have a lot of points that we're still, let me re-say that. We're hoping to achieve LEED Gold, and we are on target to do so. A lot of the project is complete, so I think I'd hope that we're in good shape at this point, but I don't want to jinx anything. And so we've been excited to be involved in this project, and I just wanted to share some images at the end. So we these early computer rendering here, but then I just walked by a couple days ago, and it's coming to life. So it's really cool to see them beginning to quickly put this curtain wall on. They changed just in a couple weeks. And I believe they're going to be wrapping up the entire curtain wall before Thanksgiving. Some more views of the project as we look from the west on the entrance there. I like these kind of aerial views. You can begin to see this is the southwest corner of the project. The parking garage is to the left. In the bottom middle is the book drop. So there's a window there for drive-by and dropping off your books or picking up books or maybe even 3D printers, whatever you need. View of the south. So as I mentioned, some of the glazing is much more open. So looking at those views of the courtyard of the nature to the outside is an important part of creating that. But here you're not seeing the sunshades. Those won't be put on until like the very end. And so just wanted to finish with a photo of the DoSpace's future home, the maker lab here in the center, which I think is going to be a awesome space. Really excited to go in there and see what you guys got. And I also should thank, the rest of our team. This is not just myself and Michael doing the whole project, but it is a huge team that's been involved. The Omaha Public Library Foundation, the City of Omaha, and DoSpace have been a huge member of the team and really been a great team to work with. Really enjoyed the process. APMA has been the interior designers. Margaret Sullivan's studio is a library master planner. Kiewit doing the construction, and Rainwood has helped us as the client advocate, client representative for Heritage Omaha, who's been leading the fundraising charge on the project. And so hopefully you've learned about kind of the challenges we faced or challenges that we face as a society, some of the strategies and mitigation we can do to treat it, some introduction to LEED, and then see how we've begun to implement how it's getting used on the library. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. That was amazing. I learned something. I kept hearing about LEED, but I wasn't sure exactly how it worked.
Right.
It was great to hear. You've been hiding that resume story from us all this time.
All that time, I know,
I
buried it.
had no idea. That's already been passed along to people.
Nice. Okay.
That is great. We love to hear stories of kind of people using our services and then coming kind of full circle on that. As a reminder to everybody, we've got some time last session of the day, so we can kind of extend this out a little bit. If you have any questions, thank you to those who have lasted. I know we're getting towards the end of the business day here, so it can be a little daunting sometimes. We do have one question sitting in the Q&A already from Don, and the timing of this question, I will just preface with, was about when you just started showing some of the first interior photos, mainly the commons area. And so the question was, with energy efficiency so important, why are the ceilings so high, wasting so much space that has to be heated and cooled?
Exactly. And that's a huge reason why the underfloor air system was such a big win for this. He's 100% right. I mean, that would just be, if we were shooting air from 20 feet up, that would be some really hot or really cold air up there, and hence a lot of energy. So the system below that comes from under the floor is a low speed to it, low velocity. And so it's just lightly kind of filtering up through those little vents that I displayed. So it's actually, I mean, it's even closer to you than it would be even if you had a 10-foot ceiling. So yeah, it's a great way to call that out, because it would be a big, that'd be a lot of space to fill. But we don't care what temperature it is 10 feet up above people in that big space because no one's there.
Right.
So it's really just about the level that we are, right? So
Gotcha. And also like in other like just using this picture that's on the screen now, yes, there's a big open area with a big vaulted ceiling, but like the vast majority of it is going to be like 10 to 12 foot ceilings, like normal height. So
right.
just not
Yeah.
to you got it,
Yep.
but you got to have a good view at some point too. So
You know, yeah, and that's really just that central area that yeah does have that kind of really high ceilings. And you're right. I mean, just kind of switch back through some of these other areas that we've shown. I mean, this is the community room, which does have a high ceiling, but that's on the first floor as well.
gotcha.
And that's kind of natural for those types of spaces to be larger anyway. But the third floor reading room, we're back down to a more conventional ceiling height. So
Um,
yeah, just kind of high level running through all those.
Yeah, I will admit I was not familiar with the floor based heating and cooling also, but Don followed up with but doesn't cool air fall not rise?
So yeah, it does. But if it fell from really high, it would heat up by the time it got to you. So by having it is pressurized. The floor, this raised floor system is pressurized. So it is shooting air out. I don't want to say it's like a huge velocity, but it is projecting cool air out as you're going up.
Gotcha. So a an HDR employee asks two questions. One, are we looking at platinum? Are we going to be close to that, or is gold
So
going to be where what we can pull off?
it's probably gold because there's a lot of like, why doesn't every project just why don't we all just do the most? And it's projects are often balancing uh, many different things that are sometimes at odds with sustainable targets. Cost is a huge one. You're always trying to balance it. We have many items on the project that we could that can help the sustainability of the project, but may be added later after the project is complete. For example, we've structured the roof of the building to support photovoltaic panels. So if in the future that someone can figure out how to mostly pay for that project, they can come and implement it without huge costs to upgrade the base of the building. So those are all kind of set. There's a lot of other things that are also, library has huge goals of what they're trying to pursue that are not, I can't think of any right now, but like not particularly aligned with sustainability. There's a lot that are, but
Mhm.
so it's a balancing act, and that's kind of what I'm sure you've been involved in the process, but trying to evaluate the kind of pros and cons of these is really the fine balancing that has to take place.
I won't share because I don't want to disappoint anybody, but I can think of one or two things that got cut, and I was
Yeah,
kind of disappointed, and like,
yeah,
yeah, okay, but it also saved us another $2 million or something like that, So
yeah,
it is a balancing act.
yeah.
That same employee asks if the library will be hiring. So I don't know, you might lose somebody to. All I can say is yes. That is the city of Omaha's department. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, we're gonna need people to work there. So,
perfect.
is the simple answer. I will say too, when you started showing pictures of the construction, we were getting a lot of hearts and a lot of wow faces coming up in the emoji system. So, yeah, it's I need to update my laptop's wallpaper to a more recent construction drone picture. I'm gonna have to
Right.
ask the folks for one of those.
Yeah.
I've been watching this thing. I just start talking about it, looking at these pictures. I get goosebumps, and I've been involved. Like this
Yeah,
is just, I'm a librarian by training. This building is going to be amazing. And
it is.
Tim,
Yeah.
thank you for
No.
all the work that
Mhm.
all of you folks have put into this.
Yeah. No,
And
it's been awesome.
thank you for sharing. And I don't know if anybody on the call was involved, but we did dozens upon dozens of community meetings and stakeholder groups and things
Yeah.
over the years. If any of you attended any of those, I will tell you every single comment you made got read. I know
Yeah.
I read most of them myself, amongst everybody else, and we really tried to take um, everybody's input and opinion into the design of this building. One of the biggest things that was requested was meeting rooms. We're going to have what, 19 bookable meeting rooms, something like this in this building.
Something like
Um,
that. It's
yeah,
yeah.
including a 300 seat dividable room for large events. So we've listened, we've consulted, we've evaluated, we've budgeted, we've done all those things. And this is what we're ending up with. And the goal right now, it looks like we're on track for a spring 2026 opening.
That's what
So
I'm hearing too. Yeah.
stay tuned.
Be good. Yeah, I'm excited. It has been an awesome process, and I think you're right. Like I didn't mention, there's so many things I cut out of this presentation, but yeah, the engagement has been a huge part of it.
Mhm.
We've also been involved with, that we've had a national group from other library organizations that have been also reviewing, and we've been meeting with them, talking about the project. We've gotten a lot of great response from people all around the country talking about this project. So this is going to be a huge thing in the entire library community, not just in Omaha. I'm excited to be involved in such an impactful project.
Yeah. Every time I talk to other librarians and from out of town, and finally mentioned the book bots, and they're like, "You're getting a what?" like,
Yeah,
like they
right.
know about them, but public libraries don't have these. Omaha is going to have one. So,
Yeah, yeah,
all
that's how we
right,
do things here in Omaha.
yes. When we do it, we're going to do it right.
Yeah,
All right. Thank you, Tim, very much. I really appreciate it. This was great. Thank you for spending some of your late afternoon with us. And thank you all attendees who are still with us for making it through the day and joining us for this. I will be working on, according to Zoom, this recording exists. I will be working on editing it and breaking it all up into individual videos and getting them up on our YouTube page and on our website. I will be putting together a survey for attendees. So all the recordings will be available. A survey will go out probably in both cases early next week. You're welcome, attendee, for thank you in Q&A. And thank you all for hanging out with us for the day. I hope you had a good time. Hope you learned something. Thank you very much. And I'm going to call it good. Bye-bye, everybody.
thanks.